Bata pa lang tayo, lagi mo na akong inaalagaan. Sa dami-dami ng pinagdaanan natin, you've always taken care of me. Ngayon, hayaan mo ako naman ang mag-alaga sa iyo. Will you marry me?
Based on a study conducted by the Standard & Poor's in 2014, only 25% of Filipinos are financially literate. This comes to no surprise because according to the National Baseline Survey on Financial Inclusion of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, only 43% of Filipinos save and only 31% have any form of insurance. This comes with an alarming 85% of us Filipinos borrowing money from our relatives and friends and also the informal sector. Inclusive finance involves improving the range, quality, and availability of financial services to the underserved and the financially excluded. Among these groups are the low-income groups and the marginalized sectors. In this roundtable, we will delve on the challenge of financial inclusion, especially credit. We will learn what institutions are currently doing to make financial products and services more accessible. Good morning. My name is Vince Rapisura, and I'm going to be your host for today's roundtable discussion on rejected. No application, no rejection, no problem. With me are Stephanie Chung, the founder and CEO of Ecomperco, Jean Bigo, she's the president of the BPI Family Savings Bank.
Good morning, Vince.
And Aya Laraya, founder of Pesos and Cents.
Hi, Vince.
Okay, so let's start the discussion and open it by asking what initiatives your organizations are doing in the pursuit of financial inclusion.
So,
Ladies
go
first.
ahead.
Ladies first, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, this is one of our initiatives, which is education. We believe that in order for us to know what financial inclusion is, you need to first educate the market, educate people in order for them to realize what it is,
Yeah.
what it can do, empowering them.
Okay, and for BPI?
I think for us, I would divide it into three. First is awareness. Second is accessibility. Third is affordability.
Yes.
Let's talk about awareness. Financial education is what Stephanie mentioned about. And we have been undertaking a lot of financial education in the bank, whether it's through our foundation or whether through our different units and subsidiaries in the bank.
Right.
We regularly hold financial wellness seminars that we invite our clients to, and we share what we know so that they can be aware of how they can better manage their finances. Second would be accessibility, and that's why we have a number of products that we have made affordable to our clients. As you go from the class A to the class C, D, and really, it really is making sure that we have products that they can easily access. Okay, and accessibility also means having the footprint to do that. So we have a number of branches. Within BPI and BPI family, we have about 800, close to 860 branches. And the past 3 years, we've been opening what you call our Banco branches, targeting the class CD. And we have already about 200 branches.
Yeah.
Of course, the channel that is of more pervasive presence is really digital
Yeah.
and online. We have been going into a digital transformation that would allow more and more Filipinos to get into the banking sector with less friction,
Yeah.
because online and mobile have less friction costs.
Right.
And of course, accessibility and then affordability,
Yeah.
making sure that we are able to give products that they can afford. So for some of our products, we have lowered income requirements, we have lowered opening account balances.
Yeah.
So affordability is critical as well as you go further down the income class.
Okay.
So 3 things:
Yeah.
awareness, accessibility, and
And
affordability.
affordability. Okay, thank you. And Aya?
Well, we focus really on the educational aspect of things. What we try to do in Pesos and Cents and my Ronin group really is to teach people objectively, because as you know, a lot of people tend to learn financial concepts on the fly. They think they read it on Google or Facebook, it's true.
Right.
And that's not really a good way to build your financial knowledge. And right now we're also working with startups in that we try to get them funded.
Right.
But of course, to get funded, your numbers have to make sense.
Right.
So that's what we're looking at right now, because a lot of Filipinos, actually, the Philippines now is a hotbed for innovation.
Right.
And we're very creative. But of course, if it's a business, the numbers have to make sense.
Yeah.
So that's what we help startups with right now.
Okay, so you talked about funding, so let's talk about credit. So the same national baseline survey conducted by the BSP showed that only 4% are 4% of Filipinos are able to access credit from banks, and 32% are able to access this from cooperatives, from microfinance NGOs, and financing companies. So why do you think is it very difficult, or is it difficult to gain credit from the banks?
Well,
Bank?
maybe. First, I think mindsets. You started earlier the introduction that some of the Filipinos actually don't even try to apply,
Right.
because of fear of rejection, and that's why we in banks would have a lot of initiatives that would encourage our Filipinos to actually try and access the banking sector. One of the things that we're doing in BPI family is expanding our online capabilities, our mobile capabilities. In there, we have actually a loan calculator that makes it makes it easy for clients or borrowers to know whether they can afford and access financial loans. And so there they can just input, how much loan they would want to get, and then the equity or down payment that they can afford, and the term that they would want. And it churns out a monthly amortization. Then they can see whether it's something that they can afford or not. So lowering that fear by being able to access online without having to go to the branch or to a bank would really be something that we encourage a lot of our clients to do. So that's one of the things. The other thing, of course, is information and identity. As you know, we're a very regulated industry, and we do have to perform Know Your Customer, or what you call KYC initiatives. And that's for a reason, because we want to make sure that in the banking sector, we know our customers. And part of the requirements would be ID.
Yes,
right?
government-issued IDs.
Government-issued IDs. So we encourage Filipinos to actually get an ID, whether it's postal ID, passport, driver's license, SSS. So they would need to present an ID. So know your customer. Third would really be being able to understand and be aware of how banks can help them. Right. So we have even online. We do have educational materials. In fact, we've started with our BPI Foundation, what you call BPI Shape, which is for education of our senior high school students, and we're training teachers to provide education to the senior high school students and even to elementary students. We've actually partnered with DepEd on that. So those are the things that we do
Yeah.
to be able to overcome the challenges that our common Filipinos would have.
Yeah, because one of the challenges really is instead of going to the bank or the other regulated entities, they go to the informal sector, right?
Yes.
What can you say about the risks involved in accessing the informal money lenders, for example?
To answer your first question, one of the things that's good, what's nice with eComparemo is that you just don't go to one website, you
Okay.
just don't go to one bank, you get to choose different banks.
Okay.
So you have BPI, you have Metrobank, you have Equicom,
Right.
you have Security Bank. Then the fear of having to go to a bank
Right.
to talk to the new accounts officer
Right.
is lessened because you just have to click and
Yeah.
you'll see everything. All the
Right.
information is downloaded there.
You're invisible, right?
You're invisible. So that barrier will actually help you and you empower yourself in
Right.
getting all the information that you need. And
Yeah.
it's all there in the website. And that is something that is very powerful in helping people decide on how they can get their credit cards and they can get their loans.
Right.
So that's one thing.
Yeah, but going back to the informal money lenders, what do you think are the risks if they borrow from the informal sources? Yeah.
Well, because when you borrow from the informal, they have a purpose, of course.
Yeah.
But when you borrow from the informal sector, there's always the chance of being preyed upon. You know, you do not. There's no regulation involved, so sometimes you have to pay astronomical rates.
Right.
And you, in Filipino, you nababaon ka na talaga sa utang. You
Right.
have a hard time getting out of it. So, again, it goes back to education. If we educate our population and how to use credit properly,
Right.
then you don't need to, you don't become a victim.
Right. Yeah. So you also mentioned about credit cards. So let's talk about that. Because for us in the personal finance space, we say that a credit card is actually not used for credit's sake, but it is actually used more for security, for accessibility, and as a replacement for cash, because we believe that credit should be used for productive purposes. Do you agree with this statement?
Like, I
Yeah.
personally agree with that. As an entrepreneur, I've always grown up thinking of the credit card as a tool for convenience.
Yeah.
So instead of going, for example, to the supermarket and having to spend, let's say, 50,000 using cash,
Right.
you use it because it's just a card, and then but you have to pay for the whole amount at the end of your billing, during your billing cycle.
Yeah.
So it's a tool of empowerment. It's a tool of convenience.
Right.
It should not be a tool for you to
To splurge.
not unless you can afford it. So although banks and credit card issuers make it convenient for our people to use it for, let's say, for travel,
Yeah.
and make it easy because then there's like 3 months. You pay it after 3 months.
Buy now, pay later.
Buy now, pay later. And it is actually convenient.
Right.
It's convenience, but you have to always look at it from the convenient point of view. You cannot look at it as, yes, I have my credit card, I'm going to pay for 3 months after, and then you forget paying about it, and then you have to pay all the interest rates and penalty fees.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which makes it more expensive. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Stephanie. It's a tool to empower Filipinos to pay for their needed expenses. I would like to add to that, aside from the regular convenience of paying, because it is a credit line,
Yeah.
there's also the benefit of being able to bridge one payday to the next for certain emergencies. For example, a hospitalization or a big tuition fee amount
Right.
that you need to pay for. And sometimes during Christmas, because the expenses are higher, because you have to give gifts or you have to, host a party.
Yeah.
Even for birthday celebrations, those are unusual expenses. So the credit card is able to help you bridge those unusual expenses from
Yeah.
one payday to the next. So it is an enabler, but we promote responsible spending.
Right.
And that is why we encourage our clients to really pay definitely more than the minimum amount.
In fact,
due.
what we say is that you should pay the whole statement balance. Otherwise, you're not really.
Or you will be charged
Yes,
interest,
and you're not prepared
right?
to use a credit card. Yes, but
Yeah.
interestingly for Aya, what can you say about this?
Well, to me, one thing that people sort of neglect about credit cards, agree they should be used responsibly, is a lot of them have very interesting perks.
yeah,
So if you do pay the whole amount, which again you should be doing, then you can build up points that you can use to then buy other things that maybe, okay, you get a discount on something, a lot of them have fuel discounts and things like that. And if you just use it responsibly, those
Right.
things can add up over time.
Yeah.
And it actually then becomes a tool not only of convenience, but actually of saving in a way.
Right.
Because, okay, some of them give, like, let's say, a 2-3 peso discount on fuel nowadays.
right.
So if you're really a heavy driver, those 2-3 pesos will help
Adds
over
up.
the course of a year. It
Yeah.
adds up.
That's
And then it gives you more options on what to do with your money
Yeah.
later on. Because you say 2 pesos, that's small. Yeah, but 2 pesos on every liter,
Yeah.
how many liters a year do you actually use?
Yeah.
Then suddenly you find out, hey, that's actually quite substantial.
Right.
And
yes,
actually,
yes.
also for the housewives, it's actually also a nice perk if you use your credit card responsibly, buying your supermarket groceries or your tuition fees, and then you get a cash back, or
Right.
you get a gift certificate from certain malls,
Yes.
like Ayala malls. You
Right.
get a gift certificate of 500, and then
Yeah.
you have guilt-free shopping. So
You know,
it's you save and then you get
the bigger advantage there is the ability to pay things in installment. Actually, here in the Philippines, we pioneered installment financing for BPI, and that's because it was born out of a need to help clients pay for their big ticket items. For example, a home appliance like TV,
Yeah, but,
ref.
But with that, wouldn't you think it's much better to encourage saving for that instead of accessing credit?
Well, it depends, because if you have enough savings, then for sure. But if you have a little savings but not enough to buy a big amount,
Yeah.
then it becomes an enabler.
What I meant was saving, regularly, and then you accumulate that and buy
I
it.
think what she's saying is,
Yeah.
especially for tuition fees.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, tuition fees sometimes really just jump year on year. And the ability to spread that out over several months without having to do so much paperwork, for many parents, that's actually a very big deal. Because suddenly I find out, hey, the tuition fee this year is up X thousands.
Right.
Where do I get that X thousands if I can't pay the entire tuition fee right now? And like say, even if it's semi-annual, that semi-annual thing might be too heavy.
Right.
This can give me a way to just sort of spread it out,
Yeah.
such that it doesn't affect me too much.
Right.
I guess because, especially for those who are employed, they have a set monthly income.
Yeah.
So that they know that if I spend for this tuition fee,
Right.
or let's say this TV this month, I know if I stretch it out for 6 months, I have the income that I can pay for it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
they know in their mindset that yes, I can pay, I can afford it.
Yes. Okay. So from a survey that Rappler and conducted in Rappler's site and eComparemo, it was shown that 68 to 82% of Filipinos actually do not apply, as you mentioned a while ago, do not apply for a loan or a credit card. And for those who did, they were rejected once or twice. What do you think are the reasons behind the rejection, and what can they do so that the next time that they apply, they can be approved?
There's different metrics in approvals, and the
Okay.
banks will have their own internal approvals. But one of the reasons why they get rejected is that they do not, sometimes it's as simple as they do not know that the documents that they pass are insufficient, and the banks are not, they don't have enough manpower to really go through all the applications, because they have more applications than that they have manpower for. So if you, for example, do not give them the right information, then automatically you get rejected already.
Okay.
Even though sometimes you just lack an ID, or or sometimes you just lack paperwork.
Right.
So that's one thing. That's one of the reasons why people get rejected all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And another reason why that they get rejected is that sometimes they do not have. They think of getting credit card not as an empowerment tool. They think of credit card as oh, I can use it because I can make utang. So then, of course, the people who think that way get rejected immediately.
Right. But in your experience,
Yes, Vince.
Jinbi, so do banks provide a feedback to their clients if they get rejected?
Yes, we provide and help them
Okay.
actually
Yeah.
through advice.
Uh-huh.
So one is we also know that with proper credit advice, with proper credit history, it's easier to get approved.
Yeah.
So you have to build your own credit history,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And it usually starts out by being able to have, aside from income documents, applying for a loan that you can manage,
Right.
So apply for a loan, build your credit history, then you can more easily get approval the next time.
I think one important thing also, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you have to build a personal relationship with a branch
bank,
of
yeah.
account, like
Yes.
a relationship manager.
So
that
that's
they get
the
to know you
other
better.
thing, no,
Yeah.
Vince. So in fact, I was going to get there because having a relationship with the bank is one way by which you can build history.
Right.
Okay, so if you have a deposit account, you know the branch manager or the relationship manager, and you've been, a client of the bank for quite some time, then the bank will be able to lend you given what they know about you.
Yeah.
So that's part of getting to know the customer.
Right. So one has to get over that Filipino trait of being mahiyain, no? But you really have to go and approach and ask for something.
Yeah.
So, but we were talking about credit histories. But why do you think it's important to build your credit history? What are some tips on building that?
Well, you start with smaller, amounts first. So either a credit card or a personal loan. Why is it important? Because at some point in time, you would want to be able to get a loan to achieve your dreams. In a study by NEDA, in terms of Filipino aspirations, 80% of Filipinos aspire for a simple and comfortable life.
Yes.
And out of those 80, they define that simple and comfortable life to mean being able to send their children to college at 70% of them. Another 70 or 60% would want to own a medium-sized home.
Yes.
Another 60% would want to own a car. And
Yes.
30% would want to have a business. Now, if you want to be able to own your own home and own a car, most of the time, you'll need financing.
Right.
Because it's a big amount,
Yes.
Vince.
Yeah.
It's never, your savings will never be enough to get you to pay for for a house
Yeah.
for that big amount. And therefore, you need a loan. And that's why it's important to build your credit history, because if you are like most Filipinos, you'd want to be able to afford your own home or your own car, then a credit history will definitely be important.
Does having a savings account in your bank count to my credit history?
Yes.
Yes, it does. So
Yes.
it's also very important.
It's
to do
also
that.
very important to save, to know how to save, because that's part of building financial discipline. So if you have regular savings, you put something regularly, setting aside a
Yeah.
portion of your income
Yes.
regularly to a deposit account.
Yeah.
Or an investment account, then that's part of building your credit history.
Yeah, and nobody gets disapproved with savings, right? Okay, let's talk about access to financial services, because the BSP said that it's also one of the challenges in our financial landscape, providing access to financial services. So let me go to Aya and ask him, what do you think is the role of technology in terms of providing access to financial services?
Well, number one is making it more accessible, especially when you're talking about mobile devices. I mean, right now, the Philippines has one of the heaviest penetration for mobile use. We're actually one of the heaviest users of social media globally.
Yeah.
So
Let's put it to good use.
yeah, exactly that. Might as well use it.
Yeah,
And especially also our geography comes into play, because for an institution, it's hard to set up infrastructure in an archipelago. I mean, you have bodies of water in between branches and offices, so it's hard. technology allows that to be eliminated or at least minimized. And it allows for the distribution of products and services really on a very, very retail level.
Yes.
So that's the potential with technology.
Right.
Of course, like anything, technology can be used properly or also abused.
Yes.
And that's really where the, shall we say, tension is now.
Right.
There are a lot of financial innovations out there, and some of them really do help, but of course, some others tend to lead people to do things that they really should not be doing as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
And because again, just because you can borrow money doesn't mean you should.
You should, right.
And if you make the borrowing of money so easy, then people who really are not prepared for the responsibility of holding large amounts of money
Yeah.
and have not even thought about, okay, how am I actually going to pay for this amount?
Yeah.
That can actually lead to bigger problems later
Right.
on.
Because
We want to
yeah.
stay on the white side,
Uh-huh.
not on the dark side of technology.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we want eCompermo to be an enabler because we're a fintech company.
Right.
So because of being a fintech, we can reach a wide, like a large audience. So
Right.
since we started 2014, we've had around 20 million people go to our website
Wow.
just to check, just to inquire, and to apply. So it is really an empowerment tool, and as I said, we want to stay on the white side, not
Yeah.
on the dark side of technology.
I agree with that, Vince. So in the banks, we've actually been working with some of our fintechs
Right.
so that we can enable facilities and functionalities on our online and mobile platform that would encourage more and more Filipinos to get into the banking sector.
Yeah.
So we've worked with a lot of fintech companies,
Yeah.
including GCash on e-commerce,
Yeah.
even the other telcos, we do work with them.
Right. I think this is the social development worker speaking speaking, and I couldn't help but ask. So, what are your organizations doing to, or how can your organizations assist cooperatives and microfinance NGOs who are really serving those who are financially excluded towards our end, which is financial inclusion? Are there any plans or initiatives?
Like we've spoken about this earlier, and as I've said, we, as a fintech company, we just don't you see the marketplace, which is comparison, but beyond that, we also do regular tech, RegTech. So we can help the small micro insurance companies and micro lending companies in order to help them get regulated. And so that's one powerful thing. Another thing is that we can help them with their scoring, make sure that their scoring is being done right, so that they can make sure that their mandate is well
Yeah, is served.
is served.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Vince, you're familiar with BPI Foundation,
Yes,
and
yeah.
we do incubate social enterprises. So we're always on the lookout for social enterprises. It's our way of encouraging them to really go for a bigger market impact.
Right.
And so we understand that access to capital is a challenge, and access to knowledge.
Yeah.
So access to knowledge, we do mentorships for them. And we've partnered with some institutions for that on the knowledge side. And on the main bank side, for access to capital,
Yeah.
we do have our own subsidiary called Banco,
Yeah.
which targets our self-employed micro entrepreneurs. Just in the last 3 years, we've grown to 200 branches already, and we've lent out to 40,000 customers. Still a young group, but growing tremendously in the last 3 years. And we do what we call high tech, high touch.
Yeah.
is the business model that we use for Banco.
Right.
So we go to the communities where they are in. We observe their business activities.
Right.
Then we have what you call Banco Mares and Banco Pares, who work with them closely so that they have a sustainable model and that they have access to capital. And that's how we're able to both mentor and provide capital.
You know what's nice with a bank as big as BPI is that
Yeah.
they get to do a lot of these initiatives.
Right.
So our role is not to just disrupt the industry, but for us to really work with them. And that's why I said everybody's a friend, because then if you think of if you think of your company as having to disrupt the industry and having to compete with all these established companies, then you won't go far.
Yeah.
The idea now is really to work with the different banks, especially at BPI, to work with different social entrepreneurs like yourself and like Aya, so that we as a group help our country.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the focus, not we need to make money ourselves. It's like working as a group, working together, and that's why we're here,
That's
working together in order to make sure that we help sustain our economy and make it grow.
Okay.
Well, with us, what we actually provide, we design and create content.
Okay.
Because a lot of people, we find they want to teach, they want to reach out, but they don't have the content with which to do so. Especially now that the learning behavior has changed. So you have to develop new ways to teach.
Right.
Because people are now being reached in multiple ways. I mean, of course, before, long time ago, laptops were a luxury. Now tablets are a necessity. So content that was designed for old systems have to be modified to reflect the new reality of, okay, a lot of students really take digital learning more seriously now,
Right.
because it's really part of their environment. So
That's right.
we create content for that, so it becomes easier for a person to understand, because like now, reading is pretty much a lost art. We really can't expect someone to read a book like that if a few pictures can actually say the same message.
Right.
So that's what we sort of do now. We create content for professionals and other institutions so that they can take some complex concepts and make it understandable for their market.
Okay. So where do we go from here? How do we take financial inclusion to the next level?
Well, with me, in pesos and cents, we sort of have this motto and saying, at the end of the day, aral muna bago invest.
Of course, yeah.
And because a lot of people, it's the reverse.
Right.
You see it so often. They buy something or invest in something or do something, then they ask, is it good?
Yeah, and it's actually also in line with my tagline, which I say in my vlogs. I say, ang pagyaman na pag-aaralan.
Yes. So it starts from there.
Yeah.
Because no matter how small your assets are, it will never get big unless you really learn what to do with it.
Yeah.
And no matter if you've been blessed with a lot, then it should be easier theoretically because you have more. But you also have more distractions. There are more temptations. There's more luho that you can begin to justify.
More choices.
More choices. So it's really just that. Just teach people that before you buy something, do something, study first. I know it's boring, it's hard, delays gratification, but it saves you a lot of headache later on.
Yeah. Okay.
So where do we go from here? I'm very encouraged by the healthy regulatory environment that we now have in the Philippines. With the BSP, they also have a thrust on financial inclusion.
Right.
That in fact, they now have, aside from promoting financial education to the different bank partners, they also are now authoring a number of circulars and bills that would make financial inclusion possible. One would be the possibility of eKYC, electronic know your customer, because right now you have to go to the branch physically and show yourself before you can open an account. But now eKYC is possible for certain amounts, right? And then second, they're also promoting and encouraging a national ID system. The national ID system would really help credit bureau. The availability of a credit score for all Filipinos. And as you know, with the national ID system, then data can be integrated, which will allow us to score properly, to assess the Filipino person's ability to lend, to borrow. And of course, with the basic deposit account, the branch light units, they're reducing the cost to operate for a lot of branches. We do have now branch light units which means it's catered towards individuals with simple needs, and that reduces the infrastructure cost for
Right.
many banks.
Yeah.
So these are just some of the things that are made possible by regulations.
Yeah.
Not to mention, there's also the CIC, right?
Yeah.
In the Credit Information Corporation,
Yeah.
that is currently being established and put in place so that more and more Filipinos can be brought into the banking sector for.
Right.
How do we go from here? It's how we, together with the fintechs, the banks, will maximize and leverage on the use of data,
Right.
the use of technology, which Aya mentioned, and to be able to educate more and more customers. As you mentioned, education, awareness
Yeah.
is important. We have to reach out to more Filipinos. Now, that's not easy given that banking, finance is quite technical, right? So we need to be able to consumerize the banking terms, communicate the message in terms of how it is to really manage your day-to-day finances,
Right.
and how we can help more Filipinos do that.
Yeah.
And that is why we all have white hair. because of all the things that we need to do.
Yeah,
But basically,
yeah,
like for us, for eComparemo, financial inclusion means having to work with the different regulators, with BSP, with the CIC, with the different banks also. So we
yeah.
need to work together in order to make sure that we are an instrument for making Filipinos be included in the formal banking sector.
Yeah. So we have some questions coming from our viewers, and this is a question from Pedro Sebastian Caballero. He's asking, what can you do if the credit bureau shows you are a bad debtor and you want to know why?
I would think that if you're a bad debtor, you would know why. You don't need someone else to tell you why. But if you want to improve on why you had bad debts, because having a bad debt is not really an issue here. Sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes people did not have a choice.
Yeah.
So, but what you want to do is change that. And habang may buhay, may pag-asa, you know.
Right.
So you change that by making sure that you build a better credit history.
Yeah.
So again, you start with a deposit account. You build your credit through that. Make sure if you have a credit card, then you pay on time and full amount. Or if you cannot do the full amount, then pay more than minimum.
Yeah.
So that you don't get bogged down by the interest rates. And you just build from there.
Okay, and we have another question. This one is maybe a millennial asking that their baby boomer parents said that credit card is bad, right? So how do you debunk that notion? Of course, we were emphasizing a while ago that to access credit responsibly, but how do you talk to your parents?
You know, just like any tool or technology or facility, anything that was intended good can be bad.
Yes.
It depends on how you use it. Right? So credit card can actually be good and has been good for a number of reasons that we already shared with you earlier, whether it's the discounts, the rewards, but also your ability to bridge from payday to payday, particularly for emergencies and big ticket items that you need to spend for.
Yeah. Aside from also the credit card helping you to build your credit history with the bank, right?
But this is a very important topic, I think, and it reflects on the survey that Raptor and eComparemo did when people think that credit card is bad.
Yeah.
I would state that because their parents or their relatives had had a bad experience with credit cards.
Yes.
Na they used their credit card tapos nabaon sila sa utang.
Yes.
You know, they nagtago-tago sila when people were trying to call them. And I think that left a trauma on their part.
That's right.
But what you need to understand as you know, as our economy gets more mature, you need to change your mindset and think that, hey, maybe that's not entirely correct. Maybe you should think of credit card differently. And how do you change that mindset?
Yeah.
Through education.
Right.
You educate yourself by looking at the different banks that offers the credit cards, looking at your own finance and seeing, wait, maybe I can afford this, and this is how I'm gonna do it. So it's all goes back to education.
And financial discipline.
Yes.
As long as you know how much you're getting every month and how much you can set aside, so budgeting for how much you really can afford. Don't spend more than what you are earning, right?
That's true.
So to speak. So That's really part of financial discipline and knowing how the product works. Because some of the customers who had gone into debt had said, "Oh, because hindi ko alam, hindi ko alam na ganyan pala yan."
That's true.
So it's really knowing how the product works and how it could help you would be a very important thing to do.
Okay, so any parting words for our viewers?
Well, as I mentioned, it's really just aral muna, always. Never get into something you do not understand.
Yeah.
No matter how good it sounds or how promising the return is or how good it may have been for other people, just be careful that just because it worked for someone does not necessarily mean you will have the same fantastic experience.
That's right.
Flip side is also true, as reflected by that question. Just because someone had a bad experience with a financial instrument, provided it's legitimate, doesn't necessarily mean you will have the same bad experience as well. You have to really look at the situation. And if I were to add to that question, I'd really just tell them, have a conversation.
Yes.
Just talk about it.
That's
and then,
true.
why do you want it? Why do you think you suddenly need it?
Yeah, build your case for
Yeah,
it.
because if it finds out, oh, I need it because you just want to buy the latest and greatest at the time, probably not a good idea. But if you're designing actually to building a credit history for your future to show that you were able to pay religiously over time, then again, it's a good idea.
Yeah. Jinbi?
Well, financial inclusion starts with you.
Uh-huh.
Aside from education, seek advice.
Yeah.
Seek advice that can be trusted. And we in BPI have a lot of branches that they can access and go to. We have 1,000, including Banco. And then you also have relationship managers who are only too willing to help. So seek help. Don't be afraid to seek help. And if you are nahihiya, there's always online and mobile. We have loan calculators that will enable our clients to know whether, or Filipinos to know whether they can afford to take a loan. So it's available in bpicards.com and bpiloans.com. Visit the loan calculator and get to know all the things that you need to know about getting a loan and getting access to credit.
Okay.
And basically, e-compare mo is there to help. We're there to empower the consumers. Because sometimes, as you said, no, nahihiya silang to go to a branch na parang magbibihis pa ako, magbe-makeup pa ako, mag-aayos pa ako. For a housewife who has so much to do in the house, and then sometimes, just with a click, you open it, you can compare, you can see the different banks, and but before you start comparing and before you start thinking about deciding on whether you need the credit card or not, you have to think first. Again, educate, think, and it starts from you. Can I afford it?
Yeah.
What is my threshold? And once you start with yourself and having that self-awareness, and then that's already an empowerment in itself.
Okay. So at this point, I'd like to thank you, our panelists, for joining me today. I hope that your initiatives in your organization will bring about broader financial inclusion that will ultimately lead to financial empowerment in the future. But before I go, I would like to greet my fellow SEDP from General Santos, Agusan del Sur, Surigao del Sur, and also here in Metro Manila. SEDP, the company that I founded, is celebrating our 15th anniversary today. So happy anniversary to all of us. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
for having
thank you.
us.
Thank you.
Bata pa lang tayo, lagi mo na akong inaalagaan. Sa dami-dami ng pinagdaanan natin, you've always taken care of me. Ngayon, hayaan mo ako naman ang mag-alaga sa'yo. Will you marry